center stage in Raphael's School of Athens are Plato and Aristotle. Both are gesturing with their right hand. Plato is pointing to the sky, to the heavens, and Aristotle to the earth. The significance of their difference of opinion and approach, as it is beautifully depicted in Raphael's fresco, can hardly be underestimated. In his book, The Cave in the Light, the American historian Arthur Herman even makes a strong case for the hypothesis that virtually all polarities in the history of ideas can be traced back to this fundamental opposition between Plato and Aristotle. As their different gestures in Raphael's fresco indicate, the basic point of divergence between Plato and Aristotle concerns their contrasting conceptions of universals and their exact ontological status. In this clip, we will not only explain the contrast between, but also the powers and limits of their views. After watching this clip, you will understand and appreciate its significance, and you will be able to start investigating to what extent this opposition is embedded in, or perhaps even constitutive of, the history of Western philosophy. Note that by ostensibly locating universals in a mind-independent reality, both Plato and Aristotle are realists about universals. They are definitely not nominalists, but they are not conceptualists either. Conceptualism is the view intermediate between realism about universals and nominalism, that universals do exist, but rather as mind-dependent entities. Talk about Plato's world of ideas misleadingly suggests that Plato might have been a conceptualist, but this is definitely wrong. Plato does not conceive of universals as ideas, but rather as forms, so that the correct translation is Plato's world of forms. As Plato's gesture in Raphael's fresco metaphorically depicts, that world of universals, of forms, is a kind of heaven, a transcendent world, outside space and time. Platonic universals, or forms, are not only transcendent, they are also ideal and self-predicative. Unlike instantiations in the actual world, which are always imperfect, the form yellowness is perfectly yellow, and the form beauty is perfectly beautiful. If you have difficulties in grasping this, think of mathematical examples. Actual circles might be imperfect, but the circle is ideal. The definition of a circle is the definition of a perfect circle, not of an imperfect one. Yet the self-predication assumption leads to a fundamental objection anticipated by Plato himself, but pressed by Aristotle, known as the third man argument. According to Plato, what two particular men, say Stefan and Tim, have in common is that they both instantiate the universal man or manhood. But given self-predication, the universal manhood is also man, a third man. So now the two particular men with whom we started and the universal man have something in common again, which we need to explain. And we can only explain this by going one level up, postulating a higher order universal man asterisk that the three have in common, and so on ad infinitum. Remember that in Raphael's fresco, The School of Athens, Aristotle doesn't point to the heavens, but rather to the earth. This depicts that, in contrast to Plato, Aristotle believes that universals are immanent rather than transcendent. They are located in space and time. They are instantiated in the actual world. Although Aristotelian universals are not self-predicative, Aristotle faces a problem similar to the regress problem in the third man argument, but more general. Each ontology that differentiates between universals and particulars has to appeal to and explain instantiation, the relation between a property and the entity having that property. Now there are differences in how instantiation is conceived of. Plato, for instance, talks about particulars imitating or participating in universals or forms. However, the term instantiation is more or less neutral between these different conceptions. On realism, commonalities of properties as well as commonalities of relations are to be explained in terms of further entities called universals. This requirement and the realist's appeal to instantiation define a regress problem in turn, the instantiation regress. Suppose that we have two particulars instantiating a universal. Then we also have two instances of instantiation. On realism, this commonality has to be explained in terms of a universal instantiation. But suppose now that we have two instances of the universal instantiation. Then we need to go one level up again and explain what both instances of the universal instantiation have in common in terms of a further, higher universal instantiation asterisk, and so on, ad infinitum. This regress problem has really haunted realism about universals. A slightly different formulation of it is called Bradley's regress, after the British idealist philosopher Bradley. Focus on one object, say a Thai eggplant, having one property, say greenness. Assuming realism, we buy into the instantiation relation relating the Thai eggplant to greenness. But the Thai eggplant should also instantiate the instantiation relation that relates it to greenness. And so on, ad infinitum. So from the frying pan into the fire. Postulating Platonic or Aristotelian universals may solve the problem of the one over the many, but only at the expense of raising a profound regress problem. There are only few ways out of the regress open to realists. In the second clip of the next week, we'll consider Russell's realism, which avoids the regress by conceiving of objects as bundles of universals. And in the next week's third clip, we'll discuss Armstrong's view that states of affairs are the only basic constituents of the world.